Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Lauren.
I'm Ian.
I'm Leo.
And I'm Peter, and this is
Spaces. Hey y'all, welcome to Spaces. Today we are taking a break from our mental health series and we're going to talk about something. It's starting here, which is this topic of selfishness, and especially the relationship between selfishness and injustice. Now, I know that word injustice, or really justice in general, is so loaded right now, but for our purposes, we're defining injustice as any time that we disadvantage someone else for the sake of our benefit. So anytime we, receive some benefit on the back of someone else. And now this can take a lot of different forms, but I wanted to open it up to our crew today. Where do you see, whether maybe in our society, but I think especially interesting is maybe in your own life, where is it that we, even in some small things, where do you find it within yourself or within your sphere of influence that you find yourself, willing to disadvantage another person for your own benefit? It could be a small thing or a big thing, but is this something, where do you guys see this?
I know I personally see it. I was talking about this before we started.
Yeah.
But I was talking about how on social media, people tend to post, their accomplishments or their goals, like whether or not someone's super buff or someone's like in Hawaii or something like that. Like you see that they're at this advantage and it kind of makes you feel bad. And so sometimes, I don't know if everyone does this, but I know sometimes if you see someone else that you're kind of in a way doing something that's better than them, you kind of feel like you're at an advantage from them, or like it makes you feel a little bit good about yourself when you see someone else at a small disadvantage. And that, I know that sounds very terrible.
No.
It sounds like a very, very bad person.
But you're saying we compare ourselves and
Exactly.
then we feel better if they're not in as good of a spot as we are.
Exactly. We kind of use that, and sometimes that goes into our own self-esteem, the way we see ourselves.
Oh, for sure.
And it goes into just who we are as people sometimes.
So maybe not even just our acts, but you're right away going to things within your own heart, Leo. Yeah. That's so good. Anything else? What?
I definitely relate to that, with self-esteem, I was never good at math or school and middle school or high school, but once I came to college, I was like, oh, this is grind time. You got to make good grades. It's always such a pressure for this generation, especially from parents to always succeed.
Yeah.
And then when I make that, I got an A on my first exam for this semester. Oh no, please don't. So I got an A, and that's very new to me because I wasn't like that in high school.
Sure.
So when I asked one of my friends hey, what did you get? I got a B minus. Guess what that did to my self-esteem? Boop boop boop. Because I was never good at it in high school. It gave me such pleasure in myself. I was oh my goodness, I'm better than this person. And the funny thing is that this person that made a lower grade than me was actually smarter and did a lot better in the classes. But when this one event happened, I disadvantaged them for my own self-esteem,
Yeah.
So little things like that really affect your heart, and I felt bad, but I also, it's hard to not feel good for yourself,
Yeah, because you're I was getting really bad grades back then, and now
oh
I'm
my goodness, yes,
you just feel the power of
you
being
do.
having
It's
the higher
always
grade.
about trying to one up a person. It doesn't matter if it's sucks for them, but if it's good for you, great. No, that's not right.
Yeah.
But I relate so hard.
Yeah, seeing it even in a thing like grades. Yeah. Peter, you have something, or
I'm still thinking.
you're still thinking? Well, for me, something that I've been thinking about is this kind of suck because it's been messing with me, but I've been thinking about it even in the sense of and I know this might maybe seem a little bit benign, but I've been thinking about it even in the structures of consumerism. So I've been reading this book called You Are What You Love by James K.A. Smith, and he brings up this point that we've been like whenever we go to a mall. I think this book was written a few years ago, less online shopping, but whether it's online shopping or whether we go to a mall, we've been taught to almost think like things magically appeared on the rack, like everything just showed up at the mall. We're not taught to think about where did it come from, who produced it, what were the conditions of the workers that were there. And as I've been thinking about my life, I've been like, wow, like I look at the back of my shirt and I think about who made my jeans and things like that. And there's almost a sense where in a very practical level, there's something that's systemic, where we benefit, right? We benefit with our convenience. We benefit with, right, the convenience of our clothing or this and that off the back of someone who is being disadvantaged.
That is so
and
true.
then I think about it in my own life and I'm like, shoot, I'm 23 now. It was my birthday yesterday.
Woo!
Hey.
And Peter's on Monday.
Yes.
2 birthdays right here.
But we'll only say my age, Peter. We won't go there.
21.
Because I
Not
feel
a
like,
day over
especially when
21.
you don't have a beard, like everyone will like way undershoot your age. Like I don't think
It's
most
died.
people would not. Yes. Anyway, but the point is that, man, I think about it and I'm like, I need to take ownership for the fact that the things that I'm buying or the things that I'm choosing to engage in, even if they're cultural, even if they're systemic, I still have a part in perpetuating the system. And so that's something that I think about for my life, that I've been challenged even this week.
Wow.
Where else do we
so
see this?
simple,
Maybe where else do we see this sense of we're willing to disadvantage someone else for our own gain?
I mean, like definitely in politics too. Like with the
What do you mean?
debates, like
Say
coming
more.
up. Like we have the election coming up, and like all these debates, like it gets brutal. And I don't want to go into politics because I really don't mess with that, right? But like whenever you debate, you're trying to disadvantage the other person to like convince the audience that this person is better, this person sucks,
Yeah.
So that's kind of like how we see it in our community, and sadly those like decisions affect everybody as a whole. And you can see how small things of disadvantaging somebody affects a whole community, or like it can go either or. It just depends. But that's like how I see it in our social life.
Yeah, like other people's perception of that person.
Yes, like even some of it might not be true, because you don't know that person's heart, and
Yo,
Yeah.
it's basically.
there's one that came to my mind right now, and I don't know if I should say it. Leo, you might have to edit this out later, but I think for me it's an important issue, and we don't have to keep the conversation here, but I think it's important to mention this, which is, man, I know I'm sticking to like these big picture ones, but the issue of pornography. If we think about that is one of the ultimate ways of disadvantaging someone else for your own gain, for your own pleasure. Because what pornography
That's
is doing
true.
is,
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
well, what it's doing is perpetuating the sex slave trade.
Yeah,
That's exactly what
Yeah,
it's doing.
I saw a post about
Me
that.
too. I was
earlier.
reading about that earlier.
On the other side of that screen, at the other side is a real person who is being disadvantaged.
Yeah.
A real person who is being taken advantage of for the convenience of having something on your smartphone. And this is, that's the real thing of our world right now, is every time, man, as terrible and addictive and all these things, but even as common as it is, every time that young man or young woman, or look at my own life, like whenever that happens, then you are disadvantaging someone else for your own gain.
That's true.
And I think there's an important accountability factor that I think about, in my own life, struggling with that in high school.
Yeah. And it changes, kind of like what Lauren was saying, it changes your perspective of the way you see the person that you're watching on the screen. Like it starts making you see other people as like objects. Exactly. You don't see them as people with feelings, with like emotions, with like all these complex thoughts and personalities and everything, because it changes your perception of that person. So,
And the scary part is that's what we're being taught. You know, that we're conditioned more and more and more in that way, but that doesn't remove that.
I think what makes it more dangerous is the post modern thinking.
What do you mean?
Well, if you take into account everything you have said, and we have a mindset of this is what makes me feel good,
Okay.
and this is what's true to me, and my truth is different than your truth. You see, that complicates this whole taking advantage, on the back of other people. Because if it feels good to me and it's my truth, then it's valid to me, and I'll defend it. I'll stand for it. I'll create a whole community around it. I will create
a brand.
I'll create a brand out of it. If it's true to me, it's fine. If you were not smart enough to figure it out, or to say no to it, you were not smart enough to say no. You just came into it. That's your problem.
And I'll take your money too.
Yeah, I'll take your money too, or take whatever. There's things that more than money. I'll take your soul.
Wow.
And I'm saying, I say soul in a very sensitive way. I'm not meaning a theological way. I'm just saying, taking the heart of who you are.
Your real self.
The problem is, you see, by us having this conversation, we're stating something very important, that we believe in an absolute.
Wow.
That we believe in a principle. That there is right and wrong. You see, and that there's a platform, there's a departure for that understanding. We believe, we're basically thinking, about God. We're thinking about His justice. We're thinking about His heart. But if I depart from a platform that is relativism.
Yeah.
Then I really don't have no absolutes. I can't have no absolutes.
I don't have a departure point.
I don't have a departure point because, we cannot even talk about like what's devious or what's not, because it depends upon what I see as true, different than what you see as true. So put law and order in there.
Okay.
Put justice in there. Put how we treat people, how we see people. Put racism. Put prejudice in there. Put all these stuff. Put it in that mindset of what you got. You got a web of things of how people disadvantage other people. And so it's not about rich or poor. It's not about the social status here. Now it becomes about what the Bible, and I depart from the Bible, what the Bible calls wicked and what the Bible calls righteous.
Well, talk more about that. You were describing.
Yeah. So in the book of Proverbs, the righteous, the Sadiq, the Sadiq are
In Hebrew.
In Hebrew, yeah, they are the
Original language of the Old Testament.
Yeah, which means, thank you for explaining that. Which means, righteous. They are described as those who disadvantage themselves to advantage the community.
Those who disadvantage themselves for someone else.
Yeah, for someone else.
That is who are called the righteous.
Yeah, and then and specifically not just someone else, but the community, because it's a communal thinking. It's not individualistic. You see, and then.
It's not written in America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Made in America.
then wickedness, is basically those who advantage themselves on the back of other people or the community.
Ooh.
You see? Mm-hmm. You see, and so if you look at it through those lenses,
Yeah.
it's another conversation.
Then the Bible's essentially giving this like almost stinging rebuke in a sense.
And it's basically anybody and everybody can fall into this. That means us Christians, non-Christians. I mean, anybody can fall into this.
Wait. So you're saying just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean that I am what Scripture would call the righteous?
Basically, what this article is basically saying is that we have, in a way, has sold themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And we have not really got into the what it really matters, what it really means to be a Christian, what it really means to be a follower of Jesus. the everything has a cost. Everything has a cost.
You
right?
talk about that a lot, yeah. Yeah.
And when I follow Jesus, even though God has given me grace and He loves me and He cares for me, but He invites me to this path. He invites me to this journey. That journey has a cost. Because if I stand for what Jesus is trying to tell us, if I stand for example, Sermon on the Mount stuff.
Matthew 5 in
Yeah.
the New Testament, yeah.
Matthew 5, 6, and 7.
Jesus'
Yeah.
biggest, most popular sermon. Yeah.
And so, if I stand for those principles, there's going to be a cost. There's going to be people who love me. There's people who are not going to love me. You see,
Yeah.
Jesus stood up for the people in His time, and He ended up at the cross. And those people were poor. Those people were disadvantaged. Those people were ostracized, marginalized. Other people were rich. He stood for all of them, and it took Him to the cross. You see, so when we think about this whole disadvantage, this web, it's a web. It goes in different directions, and it's not just what we popularly, what is popular.
So it's not just a label.
It's not just.
So
a
again,
label.
Christian does not mean that you are living the way of the righteous. Just because you call yourself a Christian does not mean that you are doing what in Scripture says what a Christian is supposed to be living, the type of lifestyle, the type of habits, the type of personal formation. In other words, like who you really are when no one's looking.
Like
who
practicing
you-
what you believe,
Who you are on Monday rather than who you are on.
Who are you at home or versus how are you at church,
Yeah.
And I think one thing that we need to consider here is that because at this point, we're making people feel guilty.
Okay.
And if you're feeling guilty, just stop. Don't feel guilty, because the only thing that guilt accomplishes is a transformation of the exterior. It doesn't change the heart. All of us are in a journey. If you have accepted Jesus and you're a follower of Jesus, it might be that you're in some journey area, know. And God is inviting us to grow in every way, and that's why we have so many prophets that in the Old Testament are really trying to invite Israel in different times and periods of Israel's journey into a more accountable relationship with God.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: it's not even accountable relationship with God.
What is it?
It's not even pay it forward, because I want to challenge even the pay it forward mentality.
Which we're going to talk about soon.
Because, it's interesting because have you noticed a lot? All of us have done this. So we have fallen into this in one way or another. When I do something good, if our church did something amazing to this community, or I did something, I take a selfie, or I kind of share it, etc. Kind of deal thing, etc. And that's it's something like extraordinary. Every time we do a good deed, something that a Christian should do, it's something extraordinary. Oh, we did this. We went into this community and we create this big stories and all that stuff, etc. But it's not supposed to be extraordinary. It's supposed to be ordinary. It's supposed to be the norm. We followers of Jesus, that should be our life. That should be what we always do.
Always going back to it, disadvantaging ourselves for the sake of someone else.
Yeah.
But that makes me think of not just the things that we do collectively as a body of Christ, right? That word as a church or as a group of people who are trying to model our lives around Jesus. But it seems like that's also disadvantaging ourselves, something that we have an opportunity to do on a daily basis in our own spheres of influence, in our own circles. But before we continue with that, Leo, Lauren, what are you guys thinking about this right now?
I was kind of, whenever you're talking about living that lifestyle of Christianity, like for me, I used to, growing up in like a really conservative Hispanic household, I used to think that like you had to follow rules, and it mattered more about what the people in the church thought about what you were doing rather than your actual relationship with God. And like I remember in high school, like my teacher, Mr. Kano, he would always tell me, or he would always tell our class, he'd always be like, read the Bible, read the Bible every day, read the Bible every day. And I felt like this was my mentality back then.
Yeah.
Like I felt like because I was so involved in school and because I took part in these community ministry projects that was enough. That I didn't feel like I had to go to the Bible to read anything. I didn't feel like I actually had to work on my relationship with God, because I felt like that was my relationship with God. Doing, just ministry or even listening to Christian music, like for me that was just my relationship with God. It didn't feel like it was a real connection. It felt like it was just something that I was doing and I was used to, and then I kind of reached the point where I figured out that Christianity is like a lifestyle. What you learn, you have to do, and like, because I felt like some of the times when I would take part in ministry projects and sometimes when I would do stuff like that, I mean, this is gonna sound really bad, but if I would do it kind of like to make myself kind of feel good,
Sure,
or to kind of put on this persona of myself that I'm like this Christian guy, that I'm always gonna be a part of something that's for God and stuff like that. But it didn't feel genuine. It felt like I was just doing it on the outside. And it didn't take up until like my freshman year of college, whenever I got into some bad habits and I started doing a whole bunch of like bad stuff, that I realized that I never really had a real relationship with God.
Wow.
And it wasn't a real like lifestyle. It was just something that I did because I wanted it. Like it was kind of like clout,
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of wanted to use God to make myself look better, or to make my other people think that I was something that on the inside I really wasn't,
Yeah, I relate to that so much because I did a lot of community service and door-to-door kind of community outreach when I was younger. I mean, I still do that, but anyway, like I would feel so like it was a chore to do these things. And my mom would tell me, this is what we need to do this, we're Christians because we have to help these people. And I was like, oh, okay, Mom, like that kind of attitude. So whenever I would do it, I would kind of do it like, here you go, this is Jesus. Like, I didn't see the importance in that. Like, cause, and then after, my mom would ask me, so how did you feel about it? Like, you feel good? Like, you help these people? And I'm like, honestly, I feel a lot better. Because, like, when you give and you teach something new, it makes you feel better inside that you shared some knowledge about Jesus. Yeah. And I always thought that was enough for me. Because at the beginning, my attitude was like, oh, I don't want to do this. And then towards the end, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad, Like, this is what God wants me to do. This is the right thing. And so I would feel better that I actually did it instead of doing it with the right attitude. So, like, I relate to that a lot. And then something you said about disadvantage. I feel like as Christians, it's important, or like it's a necessity kind of, to disadvantage yourself, to get rid of those things in order to help a better person. Like, a disadvantage would be giving up some unhealthy habits, or like changing your mentality and the point of view on things that the world offers, and accepting what God has to give us, the point of view that God wants to give us in order to be a better person for another person, because how can you help somebody if you haven't helped yourself? It would be an unspiraling loop of nothing. Like, how would this other person benefit from you in a good way if you haven't helped yourself?
It's like, how can you give something you don't even have?
Exactly, like that.
Yeah, and it's like surface kind of what I was going through, where I felt like I was giving something to them, but it wasn't really in here.
It wasn't yours.
Yeah, it wasn't mine.
With,
it was just for what it looked like, because I wanted to look a certain way by doing something. It wasn't born from me.
So you're saying, what I'm hearing you guys say is that if we find ourselves in this place of where our default really is selfishness, or those listening, or we find ourselves in those places where we are prioritizing ourselves over others, that if we find ourselves in that place and we don't want to be in that place, the first step is not to just go, I'm just gonna go do stuff. The first step is to become something different. It actually begins with an internal work. Is that that's what I'm hearing you guys say?
Yes.
Yeah.
That it actually starts with an internal work. Yeah, Peter.
And at the same time, I would like to say, don't let that become an obstacle for you to do it.
What do you mean?
Because if you're gonna wait for your internal work to be okay,
yeah,
it's you're never gonna do nothing else. You're
That's
gonna become
true.
completely inward. Yeah, there's an argument. You know, I don't know if the word argument is the right one, but the examples that you guys brought are, you know, they're real because I've lived that too. Because I came from a Hispanic family, and so I know what it is. I came from a very conservative, very legalistic church at the time when I was a kid, and so even though those dynamics were happening, we are sitting here.
That's true.
So, you know, it's not that they're not the most efficient ways to really inspire a child or a group of people to live a life in Christ, but we're still here. You know, so there's how do I put it? You know,
Action is also a part of it.
yeah. There's just God has this grace that even when we're doing the things that are all messed up. But our, you know, what our desire, motivation is, you know, we want to be close to you. We just don't know how to do it, and this is how we're doing it. God has a way of pulling us through. You know, I want to put
So
that
it's
way.
about our intent of our heart.
Yeah. So that's the insight. So yes, you know, we need to work on ourselves, and that work doesn't mean that work. By the way, I just want to be very clear. You don't work on yourself to get yourself saved. God has saved you by grace.
Yes.
Okay.
The
Work that you're doing is just, you know, is growth. It's growing. It's maturing. You know, and that takes time. You know, but this growth that we yes, we have to do growth in ourselves, but at the same time we cannot let that be an obstacle for us to do good, to pay it forward. You know, to use that word.
That makes sense within the context of, man, you cannot be in relationship with God without being in relationship with people. And I think Scripture makes very clear that you cannot say you love God if you don't love other people. And so I think they're actually very much connected.
You can be in relationship with religion,
Yes.
and the idea that you're in a relationship with God and not be in relationship with people. You know, that can happen. You can be in a relationship with religion and all the forms and the doctrines of that religion and not be in relationship with people.
But I think that there's a letter by the Apostle John, 1 John, where he pretty much says, like, if you say that you love God but you don't love your brother, you're a liar.
1 John.
Yeah. If you say you love God but you don't love...
1 John is a book in the Bible.
Yes, book in the Bible, New Testament. Then you're a liar. And for me, it's just like, that digs into my own life. Because then it's like, how, even when I'm struggling, right? Even when I'm going through hard times, even, right? Because I think a lot of us are going through hard times right now. How do I treat my family? You know, right now I'm living with my family with everything that's happened with COVID. How do I treat them when I walk out of my room in the morning? You know, when my hair is like up to here, you know, all this stuff,
Afro going on.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, that's how it looks like without product. It's like, how do I treat them in the morning, or like as I go throughout my day? You know, even in my Zoom classes, you know, like, how do I treat the people that I'm in discussion group with? You know, how do I listen to them? Do I listen intently? Or like the different people that I'm in relationship, you know, because I think if we want to know if we love God, I think there's a way that we can, which is we can see, how am I treating other people? How am I treating other people?
And this you shall know that you're my disciples, that you love one another. Yeah, that's I want to share.
What's up?
Let me share a story that happened to me just recently, and I had to sit down and think. I'm going to be vulnerable right now.
Safe spaces.
There is a gentleman that comes to our church, and every time he comes to ask for money, and he always has a story to back it up for the money, you know. And the first couple of times he came, you know, we helped as much as we could. The third time we started, seeing that this was kind of like some sort of pattern, and so I had a conversation with him, and just gave him a Walmart card, a gift card of $20, but then he came back again, and came back again, and came back. So we've had this conversation.
Wow.
So just 2 Saturdays, I think it was 2 Saturdays ago, 2 or 3 Saturdays ago, he came, and we're all wearing masks now, right? And so I passed by him saying hello to everybody, and I see him there, but I didn't recognize him because he had the mask. I'm like, hey, and he says hi. And all of a sudden I look and I see him, and when I see him, immediately inside of me, all my defenses went up. I'm like, I know where you're coming from. I know where you're coming from.
4, yeah.
4, yeah. And so I went up to him, and he's like, I need to talk to the pastors. And I said, the pastors need to do a few things, and after they're done, then they'll talk to you. And then I kind of walked to say hello to someone else. He says, but what else can I do? And I'm like, yeah. And I went out. And so I did all my things that I ended up being in these meetings, and I forgot completely about the individual. And later I had gone to my office to get a Walmart card, just to follow the routine. And so one of our leaders came up, and he interrupted our meeting. You were not in that meeting, and interrupted that meeting and said, "Hey, Pastor, there's a person who's been waiting for an hour." And I remembered. I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I went over there and said, "Hey, give him this." I think he's the first time. No, he's not been here the first time. He's been here several times. Yeah. So I give him this Walmart. It's not our policy to give out money that way. And so then I sat down at my meeting. I kept on with my meeting, and he did whatever he did, right? And I started to think about that. It didn't sit well with me. I started thinking about that, and I thought to myself, I just dehumanized a person who is at disadvantage at this point in time, according to the circumstances I know, right? Mm-hmm. And so I started asking myself this question: what if I sat down with this individual and I did the hard work to go into community? You see, that's the thing about us. How can we start working with this issue of injustice or justice or differences of opinions and stuff? We need to do the hard work, which is community. What if I sit down with this guy and hold me accountable to this, because when he comes back again, because I know he will, I have set myself like this is what I'm going to do. I want to sit down with him and I say, hey, what is your real need? Tell me about it. I'm going to listen to your real need. But after that, I want you to listen to my heart and how I feel. I want to have a real conversation with you. Okay? You have a lot of stories, and I want to be honest with you. I don't believe them, because I feel that you're manipulating me. So can we have a conversation, a heart-to-heart one here, where you can tell me your real need? And I want to share with you how I feel every time I see you. And and by having the conversation and being vulnerable and honest with each other, that we can humanize each other. That he can humanize me and humanize our church, not seeing as a building but as people. And that I can humanize him, not seeing him as a bother. Yeah. You see? And we have a real conversation, and we wrestle with that conversation right there.
Yeah.
What would that look like?
Yeah. You
see, that's what, that illustrates, number one, that we're constantly growing.
Yeah, absolutely.
This thing of loving each other doesn't come naturally.
Yeah.
We need to grow it. But it also illustrates how the kingdom of God, if you're a follower of Jesus, love holds you accountable. Because you can't love superficially. When God calls you to love people, it comes with a cost.
Yeah.
And you're always going to feel uncomfortable.
Disadvantaging yourself.
And we do everything we can to not feel uncomfortable. We're constantly trying to do comfort. We're to the point where I remember it was Mike told me the story about these buttons that Amazon gives to people that you just press them, then you bought something.
Oh, I've heard of those where you press it and you
Yeah,
buy like
and-
toilet paper or something
yeah.
like that.
And so I think he got in trouble because somebody just clicked it a bunch of times and he had to cancel a lot of orders. But that's to illustrate how comfortable we have gotten in this society that I just can click a button and buy something.
Wow.
You see, so we push away ourselves completely out of discomfort. But the righteous, the ones who are you and I, the followers of God, the call is to disadvantage ourselves for the sake of the community and for others. And what does that look like?
Wow.
That's some powerful stuff right there, you know? Especially like being as Christians, it's hard to not have that feeling that we're being taken advantage of, you know, because as Christians we want to be there for people that are less fortunate. That's how Jesus taught us to be, you know. He was there for the less fortunate, and it's hard to feel that because that we're Christians, we don't want to have that mindset that people take advantage of us because of the good deeds that we want to do, you know. The floor mat, the doormat, you know.
The doormat, there you go. The
We
doormat.
want
Yeah.
to see the good in people.
Yeah.
But sometimes, since we live in such a wicked society, some people will take advantage of that goodness that you try to give other people.
And that's the thing, because if you're a follower of God, it doesn't mean you're a pushover or a doormat, you know. Because look at what Jesus did. Jesus, he meets with this crowd, and this crowd follows him to the other side of the lake. And they're like, yeah, we're here. And Jesus tells her, you're not here to listen to me. You're here because I fed you. I gave you fish. I gave you bread.
I'm here to like heal you, you know. Yeah.
That's why you're here, you know. And so there's a sense of accountability. But notice how Jesus does accountability without dehumanizing, without pushing away them,
Or shaming.
or making them an object. You know, and I think that's where all of us fall into, because I think there's a challenge that we have, and this is a concern that I have for our tribe. You know, we have engaged in all these conversations of red and blue and mask or no mask, or COVID or no COVID, or whatever the case are, those conversations, so on, etc. And
You're talking about the Adventist
tribe.
Yeah.
The Adventist tribe, and so you find that we're at the point where we're demonizing the other side. But the problem when I demonize someone, I'm dehumanizing them, and when we dehumanize them, we're basically negating the Creator.
In other words, we're doing exactly what society is doing.
That's true.
But the rest of society that is not informed by Jesus, supposedly.
And the call for us is to transcend that, is to be higher than that, to higher in the sense of, you know, to be humble enough to create the space for redemption to happen for anyone of any opinion, of any thought, whether you disagree or agree with them, but you create a space for them to meet and encounter Jesus. And that's a toll, and I struggle with that.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
I mean, it's not easy. You know, if you're feeling comfortable right now, I hear you.
I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's hard.
Because that's not the natural thing. Because like I said, like we've been talking about, our default is selfishness. Our default is to prioritize ourselves, prioritize our own convenience. And quite frankly, it's easy to just go along with what society is doing, what society is saying, what the voices are saying. But Jesus gives us another call, like we're talking about, to choose the way of the righteous, to choose to disadvantage ourselves for someone else. And with that, Lauren, you were talking to us about maybe a way that a movement, but like something that that we can do, or maybe a small action step beyond, you know, I'm sure maybe as you've been listening to this, you know, you think of some action steps in your own life, but you were talking to us about something.
Yeah, so like for those that are listening and to our podcast, like thank you for listening this far. With talking about community, like the hardships of like what we go through like internally and externally, and like community, you know, community is a big one, and for that action step we wanted to present this challenge, and it's called the Pay It Forward movement. And so this is a concept that's kind of been around, and sadly I just now learned of it and introduced it to these awesome people right here. But basically the Pay It Forward movement is an action where you do a kind deed to 3 people, and the funny thing about this movement is that when you usually do a good deed, our automatic thought is, when am I going to get something in return, you know? And the whole thing about this movement is that it's not transactional. Remember that, it's not transactional. You do a kind and a good deed for 3 people, and the idea is that these 3 people that you impacted in a good way will impact other 3 people. So you can kind of see how it's an ongoing movement. And these kind deeds do not have to be big or extraordinary. They can be simple as like complimenting somebody or helping somebody out. Like,
Lauren brought me Starbucks today. So
Pay it forward.
that would count.
Yeah, but you know, it's like simple. Like with the community that we live in, we know that not everybody experiences the same things like we do. Like, for example, you'll see some random person in Walmart and they're struggling. They want to buy this one item, but they're like, I don't know, maybe a couple $20 short. You know, like an idea to pay it forward is that, oh, here, I'm gonna give you these $20 so you can buy this item that you need. But your mindset wouldn't be, hey, you're gonna need to pay me back, you know, because, you know, like you get their content. No, that's not how it's gonna work. So, and the idea behind this movement is that it teaches you to love the community despite our differences and like whatever is going on, like all these voices, you know. That's the odd. What's the feeling? The feeling of giving and helping someone. Really, it's a self reward in itself, rather than receiving something transactional, you know. And if one person can impact 3 people, and those 3 people impact 3 people, it grows, and it really has this. It leaves this lasting impression on a community that there is still kindness in people, you know, even though it's hard to give somebody the benefit of the doubt. Like, we as people, we have to help those that can't help themselves, or like even a person that is well off. You know, we're all struggling in some way.
Yeah.
Like, can't breathe. But yeah.
What that makes me think of, what I really love about it, Lauren, and I appreciate you bringing it up, is something that comes to my mind with that is I like that thought of 3, which is, what if we took responsibility for 3 people in our life? You know, like, and I think that's almost like a different extension of it, but it's like, it's good. You know, maybe you don't have money, or maybe you're like, you know, I don't know exactly what I'm gonna do. What if checking up on 3 people, and you're just like, I'm gonna walk in community with these 3 people. I'm just gonna check on them.
Yeah, for sure.
Say, hey, you know, do you need someone to pray for you? Hey, do you need someone to talk to right now?
And even it doesn't even have to be like a random person or your neighbor. It can be somebody in your family, or like a really close friend, you know?
Yeah.
Like you said, checking up on them, that's an act of doing a good deed. So letting them know that you're there for them, and hearing what they have to say, listen to what they're going through. Or even like your parents or like a sibling, like, hey, you need help with your homework? Like, you know, this is like just simple acts of kindness. It doesn't have to be big or extraordinary or like change the world, you know? But like one action at a time, it will change the community, and that community will change the world. So,
like a chain reaction.
Yes.
Your kindness will get them to do kindness to other people, which will then
Yes, exactly.
Thank you for that, Lauren.
So please do this challenge. Please.
Pay it forward.
Pay it forward.
Y'all, thanks so much for hanging out with us today. This is Spaces. We love you. Comment, send us a direct message, but we'll see you soon.
Deuces.
Bye.